We'll probably get started. Croeso, welcome. Bore da pawb. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jess Hooper, Programme Manager here at Marine Energy Wales, and I'm delighted to welcome you today for the launch of our now annual State of the Sector report. We have a packed agenda with key insights into the sector from the 2021 report carried out by Marine Energy Wales to review activity and investment made in the financial year 2020 to 2021 and updating on developments that have taken place in Welsh waters since the 2020 issue. In the last year, we've seen exciting developments that have continued throughout and in spite of the global pandemic. And while not without impact, we've still seen projects progressing, new entrants emerging, and groundbreaking research being concluded. This Marine Energy Wales 2021 State of the Sector report details these changes in the industry and looks forward to what a green recovery from this blue economic opportunity can look like. And as we look at the sector, put Wales on a global stage with our solutions for decarbonisation. Today, I'll be joined by an esteemed panel who will be updating us on their activities here in Wales in contribution to the emerging offshore renewable sector's progress and the opportunity that that represents investment in the sector, providing one of the most supportive and encouraging offshore and marine energy landscapes in the world. And we'll shortly be hearing from the Minister for Climate Change, Julie James, who will be highlighting some of the commitments from Welsh Government in respect to the sector. Whilst the Minister was unable to join us live today, she very kindly agreed to record a short address for us, which we'll stream shortly. We'll then hear some reflections from our chair, Martin Murphy, before I run through some of the key facts and outputs from our 2021 report, before opening the floor to our panel. And today I'm joined by Martin Edlund, CEO at Monesto, Gerallt Llewelyn Jones, SRO at Morlais, Sam Leighton, Managing Director at Bombora, Gareth Stockman, CEO at Marine Power Systems, and David Jones, Stakeholder Manager at Blue Gem Wind. During the course of the webinar, if you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to share via the Q&A icon on the bar along the bottom. If you can only use the chat for general commentary and technical assistance, it'd be much appreciated just for helping us with the questions management. We will be recording this webinar and it will be available afterwards via our website. I can also direct you to our website to download the report, which will be available immediately. I think we'll probably be sharing that in the chat very shortly. So without further ado, I'll ask Jay to start streaming as we welcome the Minister for Climate Change, Julie James, to open today's launch. Over to you, Jay.
Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you live to join in the discussion and hear the positive progress being made across the sector this morning. I've no doubt that I'll be missing a really lively debate. Welsh seas have the potential to be at the forefront of our transition to a low carbon economy. As our programme for government demonstrates, marine renewable energy technology sits at the centre of our long-term strategy to achieve net zero. I believe the sector will help to unlock sustainable renewable energy generation at scale across Wales and support the requirement for infrastructure improvements to meet the challenge ahead. The sector can enable wide-ranging economic benefits for coastal communities in both North and South West Wales and help ensure we protect and enhance Wales's natural environment in line with the Welsh National Marine Plan. I'm really committed to ensuring the environment is at the forefront of our decision making. My officials continue to work in partnership with the sector and key partners to address environmental consenting challenges and support the growth of the sector through marine spatial planning. I'm really encouraged to see the sector has made steady progress over the past 12 months in some quite challenging circumstances. This is reinforced by the fact that the sector has invested nearly £29 million over the past year. I also know that many of you within the supply chain have been impacted by lockdown and have worked tirelessly with partners to deliver against contract commitments. Activity within the marine renewable energy sector across Wales has been underpinned by innovation funding via Smart Cymru and the Welsh European Funding Office's €100 million marine energy programme. To date, we've supported 12 projects underpinning an overall investment of over £120 million. Companies such as Marine Power Systems, Monesto and Nova Innovation have received funding to deliver a wide range of tidal stream and wave demonstration projects. Wales' investment in the sector to date has resulted in significant regional supply chain benefits, with some of our marine projects achieving over 70% local content. This is proof that embedding our local businesses within the supply chain at an early stage will enable them to grow alongside our technology and project developers, helping to provide sustainable employment across Wales. We have also undertaken a soft market exercise over the past 9 months to evaluate the opportunities around tidal lagoons for whales. We are currently evaluating the submissions, and I look forward to the findings from this work. We are looking to the UK government to ensure that in the next Contracts for Difference round, support for marine energy will be forthcoming to build on the UK's current leading position within the sector. This level of support is required to reinforce the UK's commitment to the sector and provide confidence to investors and developers alike. This will build on the inclusion of floating offshore wind as an emerging technology in pre-commercial development. The next couple of years will be critical for Wales and the UK to set out its net zero targets and provide clarity on its future roadmap. We are looking to publish our next low carbon delivery plan in the autumn. The plan will set out our priorities and demonstrate our commitment to achieve progress alongside business and industry, transport and the environment. We will use our new plan to drive our interactions forward at COP26 in Glasgow in October, reinforcing our ambitions for Wales in the UK and on the global stage. I do hope I provided a bit of an insight into our thinking around marine renewable energy and where it fits into our net zero strategy for Wales. I believe the sector has the ability to support high value sustainable employment across Wales. We now need you, the sector, to forge ahead and deliver your plans. I hope the rest of the session stimulates discussion on how to take the sector forward, and I look forward to working with you as we build a clean energy system for Wales. Diolch yn fawr.
Good morning and bore da, everybody. My name is Martin Murphy and I am the non-executive chair of Marine Energy Wales. Certainly we thank the Minister for coming to us today to give that keynote address. In that address, she actually referred to the Welsh Government's programme for the 6th Senedd, which is now in place following the election a couple of months ago. In his own foreword to that policy summary in the programme, the First Minister wrote that his government will act decisively to tackle the climate and nature emergency so that people can go on to treasuring Wales' rich natural resources for generations to come. He went on to say, at this extraordinary time, the programme will move us forward towards the greener, ever more successful Wales that we all want for ourselves and for each other. And indeed, the Minister just referred to the Welsh Government's plan for the low carbon plan in October this year. So we certainly look forward to that with great interest. But for me, this really is a perfect mandate for our work in MEW and in our industry, and which I believe is so amply demonstrated in this 2021 version of the State of Sector report, which we're launching today. MEW's roots are deep in the coastline of Pembrokeshire, when it was recognised that the region's natural wave and tidal resources presented a great opportunity to explore the prospect of marine renewable energy sources, but recognising too the conservation sensitivities in the rich and diverse environment. Marine Energy Pembrokeshire, as it was, became Marine Energy Wales in 2015 to reflect the simple fact that those natural resources are apparent around all the coastline of Wales, and today Anglesey in particular has become a hive of activity, as we'll see in the course of this webinar with presentations from our North Wales colleagues. Our work in MEW is to promote the development of our industry on a Welsh national scale. Happily, I am sure that as you digest the content in the report, you will clearly see that the extent of projects is a true Pan-Wales success story, but there's more to come. So there is much to do and play for. We are witnessing a huge transformation in our energy systems, from the centralised, mostly fossil fuel-based electricity generating network stimulated by the Industrial Revolution to today's increasingly significant decentralised multifarious system to include renewable energy generation, energy storage, nuclear power, and hydrogen. System integration is increasingly the watchword. And in that context, we remain convinced that marine energy will have its part to play. Our technology developer members are repeatedly reporting success in fundraising activities to support their work, notably, for example, in oversubscribed crowdfunding initiatives. This demonstrates clear public support for what we do, and which is underpinned by those endorsements and commitment from the First Minister and his government. Nevertheless, I think we need to be fleet of foot. As necessary, adjust our approach and reposition where necessary to reflect transition to wider integration in the energy system. You'll shortly hear in the webinar from Jess and some of our member developers how progress is being made, continuing to show their commitment to wave energy systems, to tidal stream and tidal range. At the same time, we're increasingly alert to the coming of floating offshore wind energy, which has so much synergistic benefit with what we're actually already doing, and to the developments in hydrogen, championed, for example, in the South Wales Industrial Cluster and the Holyhead H2 Hub. I'd like to say that in MEW, we remain committed to the promotion of collaborative working. That's what we're about, bringing together all the stakeholders in our industry, government, regulators, project and technology developers, supply chain, and academic institutions. I do hope you will agree that this report demonstrates how we collectively are accepting the First Minister's challenge. I'd like to say, finally, thank you for all your continuing support for MEW, and thank my own colleagues within MEW who do that work for you. And remembering the mantra of the Cub Scout that I once was, not so long ago, I will say, we will do our best to maintain our delivery for you. Thank you very much and enjoy the webinar. Jess, to you.
Thank you, Martin. I'd love to claim some guideline, but unfortunately I was never a guide. No, never a girl guide, unfortunately. Right, can someone nod and just confirm they can see my screen there? That's come up, perfect. So, in spite of a global pandemic and the ongoing disruptions 2020 to 2021 have seen, it's still proven to be a busy one for the sector, and I do speak from the experience there. So firstly, a little bit about Marine Energy Wales. We bring together site and technology developers, the supply chain, academia, and the public sector, seeking to establish Wales as a global leader in sustainable emerging offshore renewable energy generation. We've been tracking the progress of the industry since 2015 in order to capture and highlight our members' contribution to realising this opportunity and demonstrating our progress as a sector. And last year was no different. We're leading the world in understanding how we can use the ocean's natural rhythms to produce clean, sustainable electricity from marine renewable energy. And because we currently lead the world, it's also helping us to deliver a low carbon economy with its own jobs, skills, and prospects, and is an industry that we can currently call homegrown, that we could export to the world. And as a strategic gateway into the sector network, we are uniquely placed to promote Welsh capability, champion the Welsh opportunity, and encourage strategic relationships. Our 2021 report not only demonstrates our capability, but also our ambition. And with ongoing investment and support in this blue economic opportunity, we can help to continue our sustainable green recovery. So what are the emerging offshore renewable energy sources we talk about? The wind does not always blow and the sun does not always shine. Marine renewables can address fluctuations in these energy sources to ensure that the lights stay on. Generating power from multiple diverse sources is key to delivering a continuous, uninterrupted supply of renewable energy to our homes. They also enable energy independence by reducing our reliance on fuels typically imported from abroad to fill these gaps. Tapping into the powerful tidal currents or tidal stream that flows around our shores offers renewable energy that can be planned for and predicted using tried and tested turbine technology in the marine environment. Then there's waves, driven to our shores by distant winds over the ocean. Waves are a forecastable form of renewable energy, representing an opportunity of unrivaled scale. Innovative new technology continues to be developed, tested and demonstrated to expand the possibilities of harnessing clean power from the motion of the ocean, as you'll hear from Sam and Gareth later. The construction of large-scale lagoons or barrages that retain and then release the incoming tide also offers renewable energy that can be planned for and predicted. Tidal range projects can generate electricity on a substantial scale and are able to power homes for generations to come, with many also providing a coastal defence against flooding. And finally, bringing together proven wind turbines and innovations in floating structures opens up new opportunities in offshore wind. Deeper waters and windier areas further out to sea are now accessible. The new frontier of the Celtic Sea offers up a wealth of opportunity to Wales for power, for our supply chain, for jobs, for economic growth, and in support of the rest of the sector. We're incredibly lucky here in Wales to have all these resources on our doorstep, as you can see from this map, with purple for tidal stream, orange for wave, and blue or green for wind, with significantly more extending out into the Celtic Sea between Wales, Ireland, and Cornwall. The UK's practical resource has been independently estimated at 15 gigawatts for tidal stream, 23 gigawatts for wave energy, and for floating wind, there could be in excess of 50 gigawatts of electrical capacity available in the Celtic Sea across both Irish and UK waters. Coupled with this, we need electrical grid networks to export the power generated, as well as ports to build and transport the devices, which are also indicated on this map with yellow lines and blue ship symbols. As you can see, Wales has accessible high voltage grid lines adjacent to these resource areas, which make it stand out compared to other areas of the UK and Europe. We can also draw on skills and an experienced workforce from our historic energy and maritime industries, nuclear in the north, oil and gas in the south, and their associated supply chain expertise. And across the 4 technology types designed and innovated to harness this resource and our strong infrastructure baseline, we see an as yet untapped solution to climate change, an invaluable contribution to our diverse and resilient energy mix, a homegrown industry creating high quality skilled jobs and opportunities in coastal communities, an opportunity for national export, and an offshore renewable energy power station for Wales and the UK. At MEW, we work to promote a supportive policy environment for marine energy, to ensure that Wales remains one of the best places globally for emerging offshore renewables. To date, MEW has been increasing support for the sector by engaging with politicians and decision makers to outline the industry's key asks and to influence change. At a Welsh Government level, emerging offshore renewables are recognised as a key part of the green recovery and decarbonisation agenda, the foundation of this being the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is further supported through the Welsh National Marine Plan and soon to come sector locational guidance. On top of that, we see strategic Welsh Government investment coming through the City and Growth Deal initiatives, working with UK Government to support the sector, with Swansea-based City Deal's Pembroke Dock Marine, and just last week, the announcement that Morlais has had its outline business case approved by the North Wales Economic Ambition Board. To ensure these commitments are transferred into actions, we continue to support the work of Welsh Government's Marine Energy Programme, ensuring the sector are involved in the discussions and detailing their needs, as well as supporting initiatives such as the Tidal Lagoon Challenge, investigating the feasibility of undertaking competition to support the delivery of a tidal lagoon in Welsh waters. In addition, we work to ensure the industry remains a component of several other policy areas, including international strategy, infrastructure development and investment, the future of manufacturing, and developing the green hydrogen opportunity. We also continue vital conversations around post-EU funding for the industry here in Wales. So what does all of this translate to here in Wales in 2021? Pan Wales activity and investment has continued to grow. Between 2020 and 2021, there was a further £29 million spent, with investment of 16.9 million in tidal stream, 4 million in wave, and 2.2 million in floating wind. With over £150 million of investment into the sector to date, we see activity increasing and my map here getting busier. We'll hear later from some of the wave, tidal and floating wind developers contributing to these impressive figures. The continued growth of the sector over the last year in the face of global economic uncertainty brought on by the pandemic underscores the strength and resilience of the marine renewables industry as a whole. The Welsh Government's Economic Action Plan, Prosperity for All, demands that all parts of Wales benefit from economic growth and a fairer distribution of wealth and opportunity. Of particular note is the Institute of Welsh Affairs Plan for Wales, Renewable Energy Future, which highlights that Wales must capitalise on the future economic growth and jobs benefit of the marine energy sector by developing Welsh-focused supply chains that are competitive. In line with the Welsh Government's ambition, it's clear that coastal and peripheral regions of Wales are experiencing the greatest benefits from this nascent industry. Of the 150 million investment in Wales to date, 55.5 of that has been spent on the Isle of Anglesey, 37.6 in Pembrokeshire, and 26.6 in Swansea. Developments in these areas have been relying on local skills, services, and infrastructure, providing additional indirect economic benefits. And of the companies who have built or are currently building devices in Wales, our research indicates that at least 50% of their supply chain has come from within Wales. In terms of employment, marine energy technology developers and associated Welsh project development, alongside academic research, have directly created 1,210 person-years of employment to date. There has been continued growth in the overall number of full-time employees in the sector, with 234 individuals currently employed full-time, an increase of 58 full-time employees since 2020. Just to give you an overview of the seascape in Wales at the moment, across this emerging marine renewable sector, we're now home to 20 international and national wave, tidal and floating offshore wind developer interests. The images on the left illustrate the diversity of the technologies with activities here in Wales, from low flow tidal kites to tidal stream turbines, floating wind turbines, and devices capable of harnessing the power of our waves. The map on the left highlights their locations around our Welsh coastline. You'll note clustering in the coastal regions in the north and southwest. Companies grouping where infrastructure and supply chain synergies complement the Welsh wave, tide and wind resource, which act, pardon the pun, as anchors, or magnets if you like, attracting further innovation, driving diversification, economic growth and job creation in these peripheral regions in need of levelling up. The investment context here, with its foundations rooted in both European funding and more recently city and growth deals, demonstrates the stimulation of activity from the funding received to date. And with further funding, will enable the acceleration of decarbonisation and the delivery of a diverse energy mix. There's no question that 2020 to 2021 was a busy and, in spite of the global pandemic, productive year for the emerging renewables sector. The pandemic has forced a rethink to the status quo and demonstrated that different ways of doing things can be achieved and can be successful. With increasing attention on the ever more pressing need to address climate change, emerging offshore renewables offer a clean, green, sustainable opportunity for our energy needs. Wales has a unique strength from our geographical position, meaning we're able to host the full suite of technologies. This could position Wales as the leading offshore renewable energy generator in the UK, stimulating blue economic growth and, crucially, continuing our green recovery. However, the challenge of revenue support and a route to market lingers. Despite active engagement with multiple consultations about the contracts for different scheme, we await commitment to the much needed changes to auction round 4. Ring-fencing 100 megawatts for wave and tidal technologies will boost confidence, demonstrate commitment and drive further investment. Similarly, recognition that the 2020s needs to be about innovation and not competition is crucial. We need to facilitate our supply chain to develop aligned to the sector's incremental build-out, rather than seeing our developers seek cheaper solutions from overseas, shortchanging our Welsh companies of the potential for sustainable economic growth. As we look forward to a potential route to market that feels tantalisingly close, this year, the year of COP26, could be pivotal in anchoring an industry that is poised to bring sustainable prosperity to Wales and the UK through supply chain diversification meant to be converted to tangible delivery to maintain our position as global leaders. And now I'm hoping I can hand you over to my fellow panellist, Martin Edlund, CEO of Monesto, if he's actually here. Have we got Martin? It doesn't actually look like he's shown up. Gerallt, can we go to you instead, please? Oh, you're on mute though, Gerallt.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
I've got you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation to be a part of the panel this morning. And I would like to start also by welcoming the report. This is going to be a brief update from me. I'm not going to speak for long. Welcome the report and what it shows in terms of the extent and the support that's been invested in a growing marine energy industry over the past 10 years. It's a remarkable story in itself, but it's of little value if we don't actually achieve our aims. And we in particular here in North Wales are working our way through a narrowing funnel at the moment. For once, I am able to make some statements that will give an indication of how rapidly that funnel is narrowing in terms of us being able to achieve our objectives. We have now been informed that the transport and works order for the Morlais project will be decided upon on the 7th of October this year, which will be the first half of a two-part consent decision here in Wales. On the 7th of October, we will know whether we have been successful in our Transport and Works Act order application, which will be the end of a two-year process, including a public inquiry, which ran, I'm sure some of you will remember, from the beginning of December through to the beginning of February. The report from the inspector has gone to Welsh ministers. And as I say, there will be a decision on October the 7th. Now that focuses the mind, because we are also anticipating a marine license decision, which should emerge at around the same time, which provides us then with the ability to finalize our funding arrangements. You will recall, most of you who've been perhaps watching the Morlais project from within the remainder of the industry, that we are quite heavily invested in a European funding offer, which needs to be spent by the end of 2023. We are also a prominent project within the North Wales growth deal. The second item of good news is that our outline business case was approved by the North Wales Economic Ambition Board a month ago, and we are now in full business case mode. We are going to be subject to a review on that full business case at the end of October this year, and a final investment decision, if all goes well, should emerge on Morlais, and the infrastructure project build should emerge during November, at latest the beginning of December. Those are the headline items of news. It would be wrong of me not to also state that we have invested a great deal of time and relationship building with Natural Resources Wales. We all understand the sensitivities concerning the natural environment, and I'm pleased to be able to report that through the inquiry process we came to an agreement on the way forward with NRW, and we are currently still in discussions with them regarding the nature, depth and extent and securitization of our environmental monitoring and management plan as we move forward. In order to ensure that our customer base, our tidal technology developers, were still eager to remain part of the Morlais community, we undertook a reallocation process, or a berth refirming process, if you like. It sounds a bit neonatal, but what it means basically is ensuring that our developers are still on board with us. And that was undertaken during the months of April and May and I am pleased to report that we have our full array of 8 developers from different parts of the world still very much on board with us, and for that I am both pleased and grateful. We do still labour under risks with delay, particularly in terms of the finalisation of consent arrangements. That's our greatest delay, and I think the other risk, which is a risk to us all, and it hardly needs repeating, is the subsidy regime and what emerges out of that, hopefully later on this month, at latest at the beginning of next month from UK government. But having said that, it's important for me to say at this juncture, I think, that the amount of support that we have received in all of our efforts, which have been immense up here, from Welsh Government, from UK Government, from MEW, from our own developers, from NRW, has been remarkable. And we've always felt as though we were part of a large team trying to achieve something. And if we get there, as I hope that we will, it won't just be because of the efforts of Morlais, it will be because of all of our efforts. I think, this is an important project for Anglesey, for Wales, and it would be wonderful if we were able to achieve it within the timeline. And given that the regulatory aspects of this go well, and the funding aspects, then I'm certain that it will bring a lot of benefits. And on the point of benefits, I would like to say this. Mentor Morn is an enterprise agency. It's basically a third sector not-for-profit organisation. And the amount of work that we're having to do in terms of our position regarding state aid, looking ahead with large funding awards, and also ensuring that Mentor Morn itself, which has got a 25-year history of doing quite a few important projects on Anglesey and in the county of Gwynedd, is protected within the realm of Morlais moving forward. It's a large project. It's the biggest project Mentor Morn have undertaken. So there's a lot of time and efforts going in to that particular arena of our work as we move forward. One reason why we're doing this at all, and I've probably said this before, and one very important aspect of all of this is ensuring that the benefits to the crew here in the Isle of Anglesey in North Wales, in Wales, that the benefits that accrue do accrue to this area, and that we are able to securitize that. And much of our work with our funders, with our developers, has been in being able to quantify and formalize arrangements to make sure that that the benefits do reside locally, that the jobs have an impact locally, that the supply chain locally, regionally, nationally here in Wales has a major role to play in all that goes on with the future of marine energy here in Wales. And at that point, I will be quiet. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Gerallt. I don't think we can underestimate the strategic importance of your project. I think in terms, as you say there, of jobs, supply chain, economic growth, and the opportunity that represents for Wales in having a test and demonstration site in Morlais will be absolutely critical for the sector going forward. Thank you very much for your update. We still don't have Martin from Anesto, so I think possible if we can go to Sam at Bombora, please.
Thank you, Jess. I'll just try and share my screen. I've just done this. Oh, I've got to move it a little bit. Oops. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you about what Bombora is up to. I guess we moved to Wales at the end of 2017, and our focus was very strongly on what we call the Pembrokeshire Demonstration Project. That's a 1.5 megawatt full-scale a validation of our technology in the open ocean environment. So the site is off Southwest Wales in Pembrokeshire. There's been major funding through ERDF, through the WEFO program. We're working very closely with Meta and Marine Energy Wales. All the project consents are in place, which is great. And right now we're in the final assembly and pre-deployment testing phase. So I guess overall the program is a bit behind. We've lost some time over the last year. Some sort of issues with COVID and so on have just generally meant that we've slipped a bit. But I guess that's the bad side. The great side is that we now have all our parts, and we're going through testing them. We're doing the final assembly of the membranes. We're doing final testing of the turbine system. All the parts are basically here in Pembrokeshire. So things are going very well. I guess just to give you some idea about some of the more recent things. So the final assembly of the cell modules is going on. On the picture on the left-hand side, in the background there, you'll see the PTO undergoing final assembly. These membranes are very large and stretched over the cell modules. So I guess just for those of you who are interested, I mean, we give a lot of updates on what we're doing, and we've done that fairly recently, so I won't labour the point here. But I guess we are launching a technical series of updates. They will occur over the next 3 months, and they'll be published through our website, and that will give a good idea about the different aspects of our technology and the embodiment that we're putting into the Pembrokeshire project. And I guess also, if those of you are interested, Dave Rigg, our CCO, and Mads, our program manager, and some of our team have produced a video recently. That's on the website as well. If you want to get a good feel, it's a walkthrough of the technology and the state of this program. Okay, I guess just reinforcing how important this development is to Wales. This is a 20 million program, 20 million pound program. 80% of that is being sourced through UK companies. A very high Welsh content of that. We've grown our staff to 27. That's been pretty steady over the last year, but we are planning the next phase of growth going forward. And I'll talk a bit more about that going forward. And of course, with the supply chain engagement come further jobs. So I guess just to give you some idea about the length and breadth of what we're doing here, this is the engagement we've had through supply chain. A big concentration, of course, around Pembroke Dock, and a major sort of expense program through here. And of course, we've had a lot of research institute engagement as well, as we are sort of leading edge in some areas. It's been good to have the support of these research institutes, which have enabled us to move forward in specialist areas. Okay, I guess just reflecting on the pathway that we're going down. So phase 1 and phase 2, these were conducted in Australia. We moved to Wales at the end of 2017, as I mentioned. This is phase 3, so a 1.5 megawatt demonstration of the technology. But of course, we've got to look forward. There's no point in doing a demonstration of technology that have nowhere to go. And certainly in the discussion we've heard so far this morning, we've talked about the importance of having a pathway for companies like ourselves to, I guess, have future projects. We can't just do development and then stop. So we've got to have a roadmap for future projects, whether they're here in Wales or elsewhere. And funding mechanism through the CFD, whatever, is critical to that. I guess just to reflect then, so the Pembrokeshire project is all about validating our core components. This is the module. So the cell pumping module, this is the device that converts wave energy into flowing air, and the PTO module that converts that flowing air into electricity. So there are key modules, and they're what we call the heart of the system that we'll take forward and export from through our Centre of Excellence here in Wales. They can be applied then into fixed solutions where we're fixed to the seabed, floating solutions, such as you see in the floating offshore wind market. They can be co-located within floating offshore wind farms. They can also be integrated. And I guess, the reality of our business today is that we're having to focus now on the right-hand side. That is where we see a commercial pathway emerging. Promoting wave-only projects is, we would like to do that. The issue is that each of those projects need to be financed somehow, and that needs very clear funding mechanisms. And one of the challenges is that at low volume, our costs are high. So we've got to go in an industry where we can rapidly scale up our volumes and get those costs down. And we feel going down the pathway of integrating wave systems onto these floating offshore wind platforms is a key pathway to enable us to get that cost down as quickly as possible. So I don't need to remind you all about the potential that everyone talks about here in the Celtic Sea. I'm sure Dave Jones can talk a bit more about what they're planning. But I'll just say there is huge momentum in the floating offshore wind market right now, globally. To grow our market, of course, we need partners. We're having a fairly different approach, I suppose, to a lot of our predecessors in this area. So we've chosen to form key partnerships because we're going into a big market. If we're going to utility scale projects, then we need people with lots of experience in this sector. And I guess our pathway has been, initially we had NZN as a financial and strategic investor. 1 year ago, we formed a partnership with Technip FMC, and this is very strongly focused on the floating offshore wind opportunity and the integration of wave into that. And also 1 year ago, we formed a relationship with Mitsui O.S.K. Lines. So they're the second largest marine logistics company in the world. And I guess they are looking at this whole sector saying, we think this is an exciting growth area, we need to participate. So our approach is to, we want to protect our core technology. As I said, Centre of Excellence here in South West Wales, but global projects, global potential. So our strategy is around building those relationships. The partnership with Technip is called INSPIRE, which stands for Integrated Semi-Submersible. I can't remember the exact acronym for it, but it's all about integration of wave onto these semi-submersible platforms. And this, I guess, leverages Technip's great depth in terms of experience in this sector, combines our technology and innovation, and I guess around that, we're building a very strong consortium to take this forward. So that program is now entering, as I said, we formed the relationship 1 year ago with Technip. We've been working closely with them and the engineering teams. There will shortly be announcements about a whole range of issues that we've been working on. The centre diagram here shows our conceptual idea of what a floating offshore wind platform with wave looks like. The actual implementation of that is somewhat different, but I've got to say that I'm very pleased with the way that program's coming together right now. Okay, and why are we doing this? And why is Technip doing this? It's about getting more power from your seabed lease areas. It's about lowering your cost of energy. It's about getting more consistent power. And one of the challenges, I talked about the challenge for wave energy. The challenge is that if we'd started this program 5 years ago, we might have said the target was €100 per megawatt hour. Now the target is somewhat lower, and the challenges for an emerging industry like ourselves is even more difficult. So certainly by, I guess, joining and improving offshore floating wind we see as a very good pathway forward commercially. This will be published. I guess this shows the trajectories we've been working on, showing how we compare to floating offshore wind by itself, what the wave energy technology looks by itself, and the challenges we have with the cost of that, and the opportunity that then presents itself by integrating wind with floating offshore wind. Working with Technip, we've developed a very comprehensive cost model. As I said, I'm very pleased to see that the INSPIRE platform, this is on the right-hand side of the diagram here, we had a target of 3.95 per megawatt for our initial Series 1. I'm pleased to say we're zeroing in on that right now. It looked like a tall order to start with, but it's very pleasing to see that we're actually getting there. So some of the challenges are, I mean, as you would probably know, you've got the semi-submersibles, you've got tension legs, you've got all sorts of different platforms everyone's working on. We've gone through and evaluated all the different types of systems. Now we're down to only 2 different systems with a view to selecting the final one in the next 2 months. So that has been one of the major activities we've been undertaking. Of course, behind all that, how are you going to make the things? How are you going to ship them around? One of the challenges I guess we didn't really think about at the start was the importance of the mooring and anchoring solutions, because it's a very critical cost. These are very big structures, very large loads. How do you moor them? How do you keep them in position? And I guess behind that, performance modelling. Being now a dynamic structure means that the modelling is very much more complex than it used to be when we had a fixed in-wave system, fixed seabed. So I guess we have to step up in terms of that area as well. All the time, you've got to worry about your O&M strategy, which then leads into defining your capital cost and your cost of energy going forward. So I guess, as I mentioned, it's great that we're actually now homing in on that target, which is critical because that shows that this is a very interesting prospect for the floating offshore wind market, where we can look at combining wave with wind. Okay, I've talked about Mitsui OK lines. I guess they see the opportunity. So as I mentioned, our strategy is to join with these partners to enable us to grow. All the time, keeping our centre of excellence, our core hub here, but looking at really developing an international market for our systems. Okay, I think that's all I have for today. Thanks very much.
That's super. Thank you very much, Sam. Very interesting to hear about your partnership working and your sort of approach to taking things forward. I think we've had some potential questions come in around supply chain and that the like, so I'll make sure we raise that in the Q&A session. So next on the agenda, I think we're going to go to Gareth at Marine Power Systems. Is there Gareth?
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Good. Yeah, so morning everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'll just start off by saying I'm Gareth, the CEO of Marine Power Systems. It's a real pleasure to speak again today. First, I want to say thanks to MEW for getting this State of the Sector report together. I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and it will be helpful to reflect on, not just what we've achieved, but what the opportunity is more importantly. That's what I've concentrated on my presentation today. I haven't done a company update as such, but just more to drill into how we've acted on and contributed to the economic benefits to date, and how we're going to do that going forward, and why we think we've got a good chance of having a real impact here in Wales. So very briefly though on the technology, we're developing a modular platform. For those who don't know, that can be fit out with a wind turbine generator or our proprietary technology, a wave energy converter, or both, for harnessing wind and wave energy in deep water areas. And there's plenty about that on our website. So just briefly on this slide, I think this is important, is what is the commercial opportunity? There's many other bodies like MEW, OEE, Renewable UK, so this isn't anything new. We're all very well that the the electricity consumption that is increasing year on year and is forecast to expand significantly more. And we also know that in the sector, just supplying of hardware traditionally or previously in fixed onshore wind or fixed offshore wind, it is vast. And I think that's the important piece, as we've put in there in green. At MPS, we're anticipating being one of a number of companies globally to share this opportunity. So some of the others are on the panel today, and that's good. We're all of our technology is slightly more suitable for some areas than others, and it's a vast market. But the key point is it's a huge opportunity, which is why we should continue to support it. And it translates into many, not just that it's about financial prospects here, but it translates into several billion turnover just from individual companies year on year. I don't say that lightly, but Vestas is a very good case study or example. They're a wind turbine hardware manufacturer, and they turn over 12 billion euro year on year with a 17% market share. So having it headquartered here, that's the size of the opportunity just from a individual company. And as I say, there's many of us here already. Just briefly on our journey, it's kind of the only slide where I'm talking about what we've done. I'm not going to focus on it too much, but we've always been invested in high quality R&D. We've always utilized expert consultants and done significant tank testing. Our most largest achievement to date, I guess, is our medium scale prototype, 63-ton device that we tested down in Fab Test Cornwall for a year. I'll come on to the kind of the investment into the economy here in Wales from that shortly. Right now, we're on a full-scale demonstrator. We've secured a site over in Spain, and we're also doing a significant amount of work on developing our pipeline of commercial orders and doing that engagement with partners on pre-commercial arrays, but I'm not disclosing them in this presentation. So I think I will drill into a few points on this one. So yeah, going back a step, 2019, we did that 12 months testing of our medium scale prototype. It was a £5.5 million phase. We set out with a target about 50% supply chain we wanted to achieve here. Ended up being more like 85%, only some very large anchors and specialist hydraulic equipment that we had to get in from across the water. 3.5 million of that came from the European Regional Development Funds and the rest private investment. And it's worth saying a lot of that private investment came from not far up the M4. It was all pretty much organic and achieved from within Wales. And then more recently, off the back of that, in 2020, we were awarded a £12.8 million grant from ERDF funding, which we've again went out for match funding for that. We did some crowdfunding last year, which I think Martin mentioned at the beginning. We were oversubscribed. It went incredibly well. Went out for 1.5 million and raised 2.3 within a matter of, I think it was 35 or 40 days. So incredibly strong support on that. Yeah, it wasn't so much Wales centric. That money's come from across the UK and Europe, but it's still great to see. But a significant amount was within Wales. I've also mentioned about we've been developing our IP portfolio, and I think that's a real key point. If we haven't got an intent at the moment, but if in the future we do some licensing arrangements for our technology, that revenue and finance will come back into our HQ here in Wales. And then going forward, we've more recently done another crowdfunding round. It's live right now. I'm not sure if I'll be able to put the link in the messaging bar. Maybe I'll sneak it in later. But anyway, if you type into Google, you'll see it. It's gone incredibly well. We went out for 2 million and it's on about 3.1 million at the moment. So again, significantly oversubscribed. And that's to ensure that we can complete the manufacture of our full-scale device and establish further these pre-commercial projects. And then, yeah, going forward, I'm going to talk about that, about what the opportunity is now. So, a similar pathway. This is nothing surprising in this slide. We're all following these same kind of pathways. We're doing our full-scale commercial demonstration technology. That's happening now. I've spoken about that. And then we're going to these pre-commercial farm arrays, kind of 50 megawatt type arrays, 510 type devices. That in itself is big opportunity. There's some fantastic supply chain here in West Wales or Southwest Wales as well. On our previous project, we used big companies like Llewelyn and Mainstay Marine. I probably shouldn't start mentioning actually, because I'll leave some out. But all the big fabricators and who traditionally upstream oil and gas fabrication. And there's great ports here like Milford Haven Port and many others. So a great place to do it. And obviously, I'm not going to mention it anymore because others have said it, but the Celtic Sea is a huge opportunity for kind of 100 megawatt type licensing, test and demonstration zones, moving into shortly 300 megawatt type projects for licensing rounds coming up with the ultimate kind of 1 gigawatt target by 2030. So huge opportunity for everyone here. and then moving into larger, what we're calling industrialization arrays of few hundred megawatt plus, and then ultimately completely achievable, but full-on industrialization commercial farms of 500 to 1.5 gigawatt type farms. So yeah, BioMEP I've mentioned. It's going to be a good test for us. We're going to be subject to tender, but doing a largely the manufacture here in Wales, we hope, TBC, but we hope. And then we'll be deploying our device from here, towing it across to BioMEP in the Basque Country. So a great test for us. It would be nice if we could have tested it. I guess I'm going to put that kind of small dig in. We need to get behind places like the South Pembrokeshire demonstration zone with that grid connection infrastructure in place. It would have been great to have done it in our back garden, but that is to come. And I still think that opportunity will be there. But at least we can keep a lot of the manufacturing here, and we're based here, obviously. And that project is supported by that £12.8 million grant I mentioned earlier. And then pre-commercial arrays, this is what we have to get behind, these 50 megawatt farms, which will again provide significant manufacturing and assembly opportunities, especially if those pre-commercial arrays are in the Celtic Sea. I've put one as an example here. This one is we're already behind it. We're already doing this. We've booked it up in Scotland, up in EMEC. That is a grid connected with a government subsidy, and if we can get that here in Wales, then great. But I think again, I'm just saying, there's the opportunity there. Again, for us, we can deploy our device significant distances. So there's no reason to think, again, subject to winning of tenders, but we can't manufacture our device here in Wales and then deploy our devices up to Scotland and even across to Ireland and certainly down to Cornwall. That's completely achievable. And then just want to talk briefly on kind of manufacturing strategy for commercial rollout. This is how we see this is how we're going to do it, getting our MPS team kind of parachuted into the supply chain. We're not looking to set up specific sites or become a large scale fabricator, certainly not competing on that basis, and there's no need to. Parachuting our guys in to support and manage that fabrication assembly, bringing those components centrally together, and then ultimately assembling before we deploy our devices off dockside, which is great. And I guess the point I raise this for is we're not limited and wedded to one fabricator, so many of them can build the large kind of steel tubular sections of our platform, for instance, or elements of our WEC, and then we're not reliant on one fabricator. So the opportunity going to many and then brought into final assembly. And on the deployment side, we have got some good marine operators here. Again, I won't mention names, I think you all know who they are, but there's some good marine operators, so we can actually do it with Welsh businesses. So benefits to Wales, this is what I wanted to hone in on. Our HQ is here. We've been based here since 2008 when we set up the company, and absolutely no intent of going anywhere. It is a good place to work with opportunities on our doorstep, and we're having fantastic support here. And we want to deliver something back, not just in terms of job creation, which I'll come on to, but also actually exploiting and harnessing the great resource we got here and contributing to our net zero targets in Wales. Manufacturing export, I think I've talked about enough. It's just a summary, really, this slide. Substantial opportunity. Employment, we are expanded to about 25. That will expand in the medium term to hundreds of internal employees. And certainly in the longer term future, I say longer term, I'm only talking about approaching into the latter half of this decade, late 2020s, in the supply chain and within MPS. There really is the opportunity for thousands of employees. Again, go back to the case study of Vestas. They employ about anywhere between 35 and 45,000 people globally. So they're not just in their head office where they establish a company, but many thousands of those are based near their HQ. So I think we have got a really good opportunity in Wales to mimic that. Fostering new talent, we've got excellent ties with all the key universities in the UK, but again, specifically in Wales, and we do a significant amount of research with Swansea University. and groups such as ORE Catapult. So that's great to have them here. Checking my timer, yeah. And then, net zero, I've spoken about that. Having these farm arrays, utilising our own resource really will help us to get behind Wales' decarbonisation targets. And then the circular kind of economic investment. I've only mentioned our £3.5 million grant and the 12.8 million more recently. To date, we've had many millions more on top of that from smaller kind of £500,000, £1 million type grants since we established MPS back in 2008, and a lot of that money's gone back into the economy. Not everything is supported by grant, and we've raised significant money, as I mentioned recently, on Crowdcube. So that's going to be going behind our other wider continued innovation and R&D, investing in that to make sure we can again continue to reduce our cost of energy, for example, improve and optimize our devices. And we're not going anywhere, so that's absolutely going to continue to happen. Great, yeah, so I won't put the link on, but yeah, do join us to help unlock the power of oceans. If you want to have a look at that crowdfunding campaign, quick plug, then have a type into one of the main search engines. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Gareth. More than happy for you to share the link in the chat. That's what we're here for. Promote what you need as a sector. It's no problem at all. Yeah, very interesting to hear how you're intending to potentially parachute into supply chains. I think there's a common theme running between all of our presentations today around supply chain, so I suspect that will come up in the question and answer, but we'll pick that up afterwards. I think in the meantime we will move on to David Jones at Blue Gem Wind. David, if you're ready, please.
Thank you, Jess. I'm just going to share my slides, and if you give me the little thumbs up if you can see it.
Yes, indeed.
Great stuff. Okay, great. Thanks, Jess, and yeah, thanks to yourself and the team for the invite. It's great to be here for another State of the Sector launch report, and also hear the Minister this morning. And certainly one of the things I noted down from her brief statement was the appreciation of the need to invest in infrastructure, which is really, really important, and something I'm going to go through in my slides anyway this morning. So just very, very briefly, Blue Gem Wind's joint venture between Simply Blue Energy, an Irish blue economy developer, and Total, the now rebranded Total Energies, global oil and gas giant becoming a global energy giant as well. So yeah, it's great that we have international inward investment into Wales on these projects as well, and the focus for us is absolutely on the Celtic Sea. And creating a new sector that we've all talked about this morning as well, so I won't dwell too much on the Celtic Sea. This has already been mentioned a number of times, just to say that an independent report suggested between 50 and 50 gigawatts is realisable. That's significant, not just at a Welsh level, but also a UK level in terms of the ambitions to get to net zero. We did an additional piece of work on weather patterns as well in the North Sea and in the Celtic Sea, and they run asynchronous, so there could be some grid balancing benefits to be had there. I know we've talked about hydrogen this morning with the SWIC, Milford Haven Energy Kingdom, a real focus on hydrogen, and also the ability for floating wind to support green hydrogen as well. I think it's really, really interesting. We believe our projects, now I will touch on them very, very briefly, are key to delivering the 2030 1 gigawatt UK floating wind target. But also, I think moving forwards, the Committee on Climate Change, as part of the 6th carbon budget, suggested that we're going to be nearing over 100 gigawatts of offshore wind to get to net zero. And yeah, great that as a sector, we've continued to work under COVID and through a pandemic. And I believe all of the projects mentioned today are real practical examples of what green recovery could look like. I think the net zero target is obviously a real key driver, and it's great in Wales that we have a blend of resource and a blend of technologies, and I'm certainly not here to say one technology is better than another. We need a renewable energy mix. That's the reality, and we need wind, wave, tidal stream, range, and of course floating wind from our perspective. But also we feel that the Celtic Sea, it does really provide some export opportunities. Taking Simply Blue Energy aside, obviously we have the joint venture with Total, but we also have a joint venture with Shell to develop a 1 gigawatt floating offshore wind project in south of Cork. So, from a Welsh supply chain perspective, from a Welsh ports perspective, if we can get the infrastructure right, and an export market is not too far away actually. But again, for us, we really would like the 2020s to focus on supply chain versus competition. I think the RE Catapult have got some credible cost reduction curves. We know floating wind's going to get to energy parity in the early 2030s. So, certainly as a developer, we're campaigning for a focus on supply chain in the 2020s. And to do that, we developed a stepping stone strategy. Can't say that we came up with it. It was a recommendation from an ORE Catapult report to the Scottish Government, actually, saying the best way to maximise opportunities for supply chain based on the scale of floating wind is to take demonstration and an early commercial and take a stepping stone approach to development, which is what we're doing. Gareth just talked about it. Ultimately, we will get to gigawatt commercial scale rounds and projects in the Celtic Sea as well, but our focus in the short term is on stepping stone projects. There they are, Erebus and Valorous, circa 45 and 50 kilometres southwest of the approaches to Milford Haven. And again, I'm not going to dwell on these, but we've been progressing really well, even under COVID as well. Great. We've just finished actually all our offshore surveys. All the boats have been out and they're back again. We've cable route and cable agreements for both projects as well. Long lead-in items, as we all know, marine birds and sea mammals. For Erebus, we started those out in September 2019, so almost there with 2 years of environmental data now, and on track to submit our consent on December the 21st of 2021. Quite symbolic, I think, for the consenting team, because their dates get a bit lighter after that. And lots of work at the moment, onshore and offshore as well. We have a geotech campaign at the moment. We're probably 6, 7, 8 weeks into that now, but almost finished in terms of identifying a cable route back from landfall to the substation. So lots of activity. Key milestones for us: CFD auction round 2023 for Erebus, CFD auction round 2025 for Valorous, and start of generation 26 and 29. Combined, the two projects, albeit quite small, is circa 370,000 homes for Wales. I just wanted to, as I say, the ORE Catapult have done a lot of work around stepping stone approaches. Just to highlight this report, I'm sure you've seen it. I think it's on MEW's website, certainly on ours. But there was a piece of work commissioned by the Welsh Government and the Cornwall House and Scilly Lep. And from our perspective, great to see the regions working together and not working in isolation. That's incredibly important. But the first gigawatt of floating wind in the Celtic Sea could potentially deliver over 3,000 jobs and almost 700 million in supply chain opportunities. And that table there, I think, just highlights what the stepping stone approach looks like in terms of tons of steel, meter array cables, and mooring massive anchors and chains. It's all big stuff, and I've got a few images coming up. We're absolutely in this part of our development at the moment, development design. And again, this is Catapult. They did a slightly deeper dive in terms of regional existing supply chain strengths as part of that work for the Welsh Government and the Cornwall Lep. And yeah, we know this real high skilled project development in the UK, and we've been absolutely seeing that right now. I think we're almost getting close to 20 million of DevEx spend to date, and over 75% local content, UK content. I don't want to start talking about companies, there's too many of them. A notable one from our perspective right now at the moment is Marine Space, with an office down in Pembroke Dock, and they're leading on the offshore consents as well. So it's real practical examples of local supply chain becoming involved in this sector. So project development is really high skilled. You could argue we should be getting high content there. It's just when we come down to manufacture, assembly and installation, and how critical ports and supply chains are going to be in delivering that. I think that's really important. Just some figures. In December, there was 26,000 people working in offshore wind around the UK. That's going to go to 70,000 by 2026, just based on the project pipeline at the moment, fixed offshore wind, and accelerate significantly from there now into the 2030s. So yeah, significant amount of people working in offshore wind at the moment. These are the regional forecasts out to 2026. As you'd expect, a lot of that job creation is going to be Scotland and the East Coast, just because that's where the big projects are. These are, again, fixed offshore wind. And you could see some quite modest gains, actually, from a Welsh perspective, only capturing 1.3% of those 70,000 jobs. So, something that we believe floating wind can bring is definitely extend those economic benefits, particularly to Wales and the southwest. Just to note, you can see Zone 4 here. Obviously, there's the Owlermore, Wintermore extension, and Round 4 activities coming up for Wales, and they will provide significant opportunities, and not captured in these regional forecasts out to 2026 because they're based on development plans at the moment. But again, one of the benefits we feel from floating offshore wind is that it can spread those benefits that we're feeling, particularly on the east coast of the UK. A bit closer at the project level now, we asked the Catapult if they would look at job creation specifically for Erebus, the first project, but also if they would look at it in the eyes of using a UK ports versus a non-UK port strategy. And again, I've got a few slides on that at the moment, but you can see UK non-ports scenario, 400 direct, 335 direct in the UK versus, the prize of trying to capture this using UK ports and UK port scenario. And this is based, the UK port scenario, just to be clear, this is based on assemble of the platform, not necessarily the fabrication of the platform, but just assemble of the platform and turbine integration. And those two are really, really linked. But you can see it's a 50% increase of job creation from direct and indirect. And this is just based on Erebus as well. And also you get the additional benefits of GVA throughout the whole O&M process as well. So absolutely, we'll be running these models again for the second project, and probably also plans start to look at a commercial scale project as well. But you can just see from those slides, it really is worthwhile, focusing on our ports. And as you'd expect me to say, they're going to play a critical role in Welsh content, but also UK content. We see 5 different distinct layers of activity. We're using wind float platforms that you can see in the background there. So there's the fabrication of the platforms themselves, there's the assembly of the platforms, integration of the turbine, but also staging and installation port. And for us, that would do all of the moorings, all of the pre-lay, a lot of the electrical cabling. So there's a lot of work there. And then there's obviously the O&M base that goes out for the 25 years of the projects. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we're working on a decentralized port strategy. There is no one port, not just in Wales, but in the Celtic Sea from a UK perspective, that's ready to do this right now. There's a lot of capability capacity on the mainland Europe. Nothing that we have here that's ready right now. So we absolutely will be using decentralized port strategy, which is great in one sense. It provides opportunities to a number of ports and a number of regions, but we also really do require some strategic investment if we're going to maximize this opportunity. And just a nod, obviously if ports and facilities can handle the platforms that you can see in the background, then obviously there's for sure they'll be able to support wave and tidal activity as well. So it's real benefits if we can do this to our ports. I'll just whiz through a couple of images. Apologies if you've seen these before, but you can see the laydown that you have in Lisnave, Portugal. This was to deliver Windfloat Atlantic project, big shipbuilding, big laydowns. You can see 2 of the platforms being developed there. This is Windfloat Atlantic 3. You can see one of the projects. If you just keep that in your mind, this part of the quayside, part of the shipbuilding site is this here. So you've gone from Windfloat Atlantic project. This is the Kincardine project, just to get an appreciation of scale. And this part of the quay is here. And then you can see over here, you have cross struts, other parts of the platform being developed, heaving plates, all of those kind of things. So you can appreciate the significant requirements of infrastructure that have been used to date. This was in Spain, the shipyard that you saw in the background, and Navantia Fene. And then it was a relatively short tow of around about 6 nautical miles from the construction facility there to Ferrol, where they did turbine integration. You can just see a couple of the slides coming through there. You can see the turbines laid out for turbine integration. The quayside here is circa 1 kilometre with really deep water off the quayside. Integration, floating integration is the preferred method, but we are having to look at different ways of doing this just because of the port capability and port capacity we have in the UK. As you see, two of the wind floats coming in there. So for us, and just to round off, we'll keep saying it to anyone that will listen, ports are critical in local content, really, really critical. So we're looking at a number of what we're calling supply chain enabling actions. The first one of those is absolutely a modular approach to the wind float. I think I heard Gareth and Sam talk about modules before as well. From their perspective, modules brings a number of benefits. So for us, we could fabricate the modules in inverted commas on the continent or even Asia or places like that, but bringing them into the UK as in modules gives the opportunity to capture assembly. So we're looking at that. One of the major challenges at the moment is based on turbine integration. So we've been looking at the use of buoyancy aids, And couldn't we actually ground the platform as well? So rather than floating integration, which is optimal, whether we could use a grounding approach to the turbine, which is suboptimal, but might capture benefit in the early projects as well. So that's really, really important. And then just to round off, obviously there's a real role for UK government and BEIS here, and having that CFD projects, certainly the stepping stone projects in the early 2030s, if there could be a real focus on supply chain benefits versus the cheapest electron. I think that's really, really key and critical, because if there continues to be a focus on the cheap electron, which has been incredibly successful, I have to say, from a CFD perspective with fixed offshore wind, then that could push you to use non-local, non-UK ports as well. So again, just to round off, Jess, just highlight how important ports are going to be, and our infrastructure in Wales to capturing some of the benefits that we have on our doorstep. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, Dave. Very interesting. And yes, I think highlighting the importance there of ports and infrastructure is undoubtedly one of the key things. It's one of our key asks as Marine Energy Wales, so we work quite significantly to attempt to influence and guide decision makers to invest appropriately as required. One of the questions that occurs to me, and we're talking potentially quite long-term investment there, our state of the sector runs year to year. I suppose a question to all of our panelists, one by one perhaps, is what are you most looking forward to in the next year? What do you think is the most, how do we go about influencing the most change in the next 12 months? What do you feel we need to do? What would you look forward to happening in that year? And what support is needed from government to ensure that that takes place? Should I start with you, Dave, because you're most fresh in everybody's minds?
Thanks, Jess. I'm not sure anyone's called me fresh before, but I'll take it. Thanks. I think, as Gerallt et al., all the panel members, spoke about how important Welsh support has been to date. So I think that's critical and crucial that continues going forward. If we think about, it's a new government, and this government is ultimately going to be in power for half of the next decade, which is the most critical decade in terms of net zero and climate change. So I think has to be a real appreciation of that, I think. And then from our perspective, from a project level perspective, in the next 12 months, we would like planning consent when we submit it, and a timely response to that to enable us to get to the 2023 CFD. But it would be, an appreciation of ports and port capabilities and port capacities, and I think this is a real space where UK government and Welsh government could work together. I appreciate different political parties and Westminster and devolved, but I think around infrastructure that can unlock net zero, I think that could be really positive.
I think fundamentally collaboration and the need for it across the board is coming through. I mean, we've mentioned it in respect to supply chain, but also with our governments and what we look for, we look to them to do to support us. I think from our point of view on COP26 in November, I mentioned it in my intro. It's a key point in the calendar, really, where we can put Wales on the map, and a real opportunity to potentially showcase what we're doing here in Wales, but also broader, and how the UK is providing support for the sector and driving things. So same question, should we go to Sam next, perhaps? What are you most looking forward to in the next 12 months, Sam, and what support is needed to ensure that what you're looking forward to can happen?
Okay, so we're obviously deep in our technical programs, both with the Pembrokeshire demonstration project and with our Inspire collaboration. I guess what we need is a very clear pathway. So, going back 4 or 5 years, there was a clear pathway available through EU funding schemes and through the CFD type of mechanisms. There was a clear pathway for us to grow our business. Today, that is it's been talked about, but we need clarity around what that pathway is for us when we think about projects here in the UK. So we need sites, we need consents, we need a clear support mechanism approach which will enable us to grow our business. The reality is right now we can see clarity around how we might do that outside of the UK. We need clarity about how we might do that in the UK. which will enable us to grow our project pipeline and I guess bring some certainty. Right now, we don't have a definitive project in the UK. It'd be lovely to have one, whether that's linked into PDZ or wherever it is. I don't mind. We just need some pathway. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is seeing some, I guess, people putting some stakes in the ground around the funding pathway for a business like ours, or whether it's for Gareth or whoever it is. You know, we need a clear pathway. So we can do
Definitely. I think, you know, it's certainly something that we're working to support and try and get some clarity around. And that pathway is two-stream from our point of view. It's both the revenue support, but also, you touched on it there, the grant funding mechanism. You know, we had significant support from the ERDF, and we see the Shared Prosperity Fund and Levelling Up Fund coming through, but there's no specific allocation to the sector. There's no kind of technological support necessarily coming through with that. I know from I think they've done a pilot, and there's quite a lot of attention going on funding going to things like town centre renewal and rejuvenation, which you completely understand. But I think there's a missed appreciation of the scale of the opportunity that comes with our sector. And as I touched on in my presentation and has come through, you know, we're seeing that grant funding leverage quite significant private funding to support that activity in those peripheral regions, but not having that clarity and that transparency in what that looks like going forward, I think is very key. So yeah, something we'll continue to shout about, Sam.
And certainly, I mean, when you think about inward investment, I mean, people who are investing want clarity. They want to know where your projects are. If we just say, oh, well, something's coming down the pipeline, it'll be there soon, the investors are not going to come forth.
No, and it's that pipeline of projects, definitely. So you mentioned PDZ, but what's after PDZ in terms of development for these wave sites? And, you know, we talked about Celtic Sea and integrated developments, but actually having that clear pipeline, I think, is fundamental, as you say. So Gareth, shall I take the question to you? So yeah, sure. What are you most looking forward to for your project or for the sector through 2021 and 2022, and what support do you think is needed to ensure that can happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that, of course. The second part I'll start with, just to kind of add to Sam. I mean, he kind of outlined it, and so has David, really. I think there is some good stuff on the way. It'd be good to get that. I keep saying the word certainty, but if we can find out from the end of the year, by the end of the year, what the firm intent is for what's earmarked for wave, tidal, what different pots are available, what subsidy support mechanism, the amount, give that real line of clarity for MPS anyway, to our customers, so they know that if they invest in those areas of seabed where they want to deploy, it's going to be a good turnover, it's going to be a profitable project, and then they'll be full steam ahead. I mean, I know they're doing everything they can anyway. So that's key. And, you know, there's been, as you well know, and we're kind of working on it, but even a Wales specific IPPA, if we could pull that off, that'd be fantastic, just because in the interim, if we don't get, if there isn't a UK, or if the UK one isn't exactly what we wanted it to be, and then so that we don't all have to start looking overseas all the time, so that we can actually get something in Wales, that would be great. But I think there is some positive work being done, just getting that clarity. For us, what's the kind of most important thing? Yeah, I mean, we've got we are full steam ahead on our manufacture. There's loads of tenders that have just come back in for actual build of our full-scale commercial demonstrator. So looking forward to kind of cutting steel, getting that manufactured and getting it deployed over in BIMEP. So that's the main focus in terms of tech development. And then the pre-commercial projects, I spoke about one today. There's others in the pipeline. So it's about completing our seabed surveys for the ones that we are taking in-house, and we are kind of owner and operator for now, getting those on the way, and then continue to build relationships with potential kind of partners or collaborators or EPCIs to support those projects. That's the kind of three main things that we're focused on at the moment.
Busy in your offices, I imagine.
Yeah, all good, all busy, but yeah.
Super. Thank you very much, Gareth. Gerallt, I'll probably bring the same question to you. I know Q3, Q4 is going to be a very, very pivotal period this year for you. But same question to you. What are you most looking forward to, and what can we do as a sector to ensure that that happens? You're on mute again, I'm afraid, Gerallt.
I'm beginning to think somebody else is trying to switch me off, not me.
Not at all, not at all.
Going back to the pathway issue, I think that's absolutely correct. And there are two pathways at work here, I think. From the technologist's perspective, it's a pathway to commercialization, and the need for people to better understand what the pitfalls and the requirements of that pathway are. Because I think it's difficult. I have been reassured, I have to say, over the past few months, but sometimes it's difficult for government to get a complete grasp on all of the components that are at work here, you know, and we've got a pathway issue that we are grappling with right now, where the successionality, if you like, of us as owners of a demonstration zone, trying to work our way through, first of all, getting consent, navigating the conditions of consent, awaiting what's going to happen with the CFD, and being able to provide developers with agreements for sublease, you know, because developers need things to go into the AR4 round, and it behoves us to provide them with those components. And there is, how can I put this nicely? There is an understanding. I'm reassured that the Welsh Government's marine energy programme, for example, has understood the dilemma that we in particular are in at the moment on a short-term pathway, not the same one as Bombora were discussing earlier, but our short-term pathway is horrendously complex in terms of being able to comply with consent, issue agreements for sublease so the developers can move forward into a CFD process, when we know that even with consent, the EMMP process, which is going to be a condition of our consent, is going to have an impact on how we're able and when we're able to issue those agreements for sublease. Now, all this is a result of nobody actually planning it out in advance. And I'm not blaming anybody, but had we planned out this whole thing in advance, we would have done it probably in such a fashion as one thing followed another logically. So we are dealing with illogicality caused by the fact that none of this is planned. We are being reactive rather than being proactive. And it is as it is. It's nobody's fault. It is as it is, but it does make the job complex. And the best I can hope for, and the best we can appeal for, is a better understanding from government of the fact that we are in an illogical environment that we're trying to make order out of, if you like. And it's complex, you know. Governments tend to think in terms of money, and that we often lose sight of the logical requirement of one thing leading to another, which brings you to commercial stability sooner than when you're grappling with a herd of cats who are very difficult to control.
Indeed, they are.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit poetic again, and I should remember to be a bit more logical myself. But I think you understand what I'm saying. An understanding of the pathway, both in the short term, with regards to the particular Morlais issue that we've got, and that we will solve. If we get consent, we will solve it. But you know, we need support and help all along the line in all of these things, because the reality is that this is an extraordinarily difficult and challenging industry to take to commercial stability at a time when so much is still in the air.
Absolutely, and a strategic industry which can resolve some of the sort of longer term issues. But as you say, that forward planning is a key requirement, just to bring those intricacies and those interdependencies into play and understand them. And dealing with any consenting regime, I think, is quite challenging. But where you've got a relatively novel technology coming through, despite the experiences we have from Scotland and the reports that are coming out of them that you should be able to utilise and rely upon, we still see those intricacies coming into play, I think.
I think I mentioned this Team Wales thing earlier on about everybody who's involved in this having a common aim. You know, this is a common endeavour by a community of regulators, governments, operators. It is a common endeavour, and nothing is insurmountable if we remember that we're in a common endeavour for a common benefit, and they're very real benefits. You know, this is a new industry that we want to make Wales relevant to.
Very much so. And we're geographically unique and in a brilliant place to be able to harness that, I think, and that has to be remembered. Excellent. Thank you very much, Gerallt. So I've just been scanning through the questions. There was one specific question for Sam, just around the Lanzarote project. Sam, if you're able to update on the Lanzarote project, and I'm not actually sure who that's coming from.
Okay, so with the Lanzarote project, we were putting that, I think we first started discussing that about 2 years ago. We've gone through and done the wave survey. We've done the grid connection survey. So we've gone through and done all the preliminary work for that project. However, as we're talking about here, it's about when you come to the next stage of a project, it's about financing the project. And we have yet to find a clear way to finance that project. So right now, that is the focus. It's a commercial focus. We've done the sort of the initial work in terms of knowing the project can be done, knowing the grid connection, those things are all being done. We know where we're doing the project. The issue is now about actually working out how do we get to financial close on that project. And that's where the commercial team is working. So no definitive timing yet on that project. Our shift a bit away from the fixed, more towards the floating, will affect the exact type of technology we'll put into that site. As I said, it's really now about making sure we can find a clear financial pathway for that project to succeed.
Thank you very much, Sam. So I had one more question that I'll put to probably our technology developers. Sorry, Gerallt, I might be leaving you out of the loop a little bit here, but do feel free to come in if you have any additional material you'd like to bring in. I just wondered, so Gareth talked quite extensively about his supply chain plans and the intention really to develop a team that they can then almost parachute in to work with supply chain, to take supply chain forward, not having any one specific location for developing that. That's possibly quite a different model to the one that you have, Sam, with your headquarters intended for Pembroke Dock. So I just wondered, you know, how do you see yourselves working with supply chain companies as you scale? Because obviously the building requirement that's there, I know from a floating offshore wind point of view, it's the intention is to do so incrementally and sort of stepping stones to bring supply chain along with us. So just asking for a bit more detail around each of that. Sam, if you'd like to start perhaps.
Sure. So in terms of, we've assembled a team so far, which is, I guess, the brains behind the technology, and we will tend to continue to grow that as we go forward. I also talked about the fact that our modules, we're going to keep control of that component and then use integrators such as Technip FMC to integrate that into platforms and deliver into major projects. So in terms of our growth plan, we recognise that we need to continue to grow our tech team. So that will be done here in Pembroke Dock and be done in other global regions as well as we need to grow. The tech team can effectively work quite well remotely. I guess the COVID crisis has taught us that we can actually work well remotely. So we're seeing increasingly now that our workforce is a little bit, it is going global, our workforce. and that's fine. In terms of our integration, we do recognise that we will need to have an integration facility. Dave talked about doing final assembly and that final integration. That is our plan as well. So we will continue to control and manage that operation. We view Pembroke Dock as being a very ideal place to do that. And we have aspirations for growing that sort of, I guess, final assembly operation here in Pembroke Dock, supported by our growing engineering team. But it won't be just engineering then, it'll be engineering and operations as well. And then that will be then exported to wherever we are doing integration and projects. So that's our plan in terms of growth. We do see good opportunity here in Pembroke Dock. We do see the need to, I guess, diversify our technical team, and that we aren't necessarily able to attract that technical diversity here in Pembroke Dock. So we will become a bit more international on the technical side, a bit more local on the final assembly phase, with a view to then exporting and supporting global projects via integration partners. We do recognise that that's a critical part, is that we're not going to become a big infrastructure company. We are in fact an enabler, and we will supply our technology to other people.
Perfect. Again, sort of around collaboration there and working with partnerships. I think we've seen a common theme throughout. Dave, same question to you, and I suppose there's a sort of side question as to what support you see supply chain companies could be given potentially by government to facilitate their growth and their interface with the sector to build that support as you're likely to need it going forward as a developer.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, we're not like Sam and Gareth Patel. We're not developing a technology. We're developing a project. So yeah, so we, you know, I wouldn't like to comment on their kind of technical development. We do require a supply chain that's geared up, that's ready. I think we have to be. There's absolutely some great supply chain capability around here, but we have to be mindful of the fact, we haven't had a decade of fixed offshore wind like they have done on the East Coast, and we haven't attracted large EPC contractors to Wales, for example. So I think there's a lot to do, and as a project developer, I think it's if I'm honest, it's challenging, trying to focus on a project development and at the same time try and work with supply chain and give them some hopefully some insights, but it's for sure we need support from that, and obviously Marine Energy Wales has got a big role to play in that in the future. I think the Celtic Sea Cluster, when that gets launched, really excited about that, because there is a lot to do around supply chain, and as our focus has to be on developing the projects and winning a CFD, because if we don't, there is no project.
Very succinct. Thank you, Dave. Gareth, I sort of drew on your example really, but is there anything you'd add from a supply chain point of view and what we can do to bring the supply chain forward?
It's easy if I just say no now, isn't it? And then that's me done. But the reality is, there isn't too much to add. I mean, yeah, it's of course we've got a detailed plan, we've got a detailed focus, and be worried if you didn't, but it will evolve over time. And as we are today, we know that we're going to take a bit more ownership of that proprietary WEC technology, and then use these large lease yards or the fabricator, win the tender and take ownership of that bulk of the assembly, and a number of fabricators supplying the components to bring in and do the final assembly. And I think that could work really well, certainly for our full-scale commercial demonstrations, certainly for the first arrays. But again, like Sam said, we're not ever going to try and compete and be, we're not going to be one of these fabricators and take it all in-house. It'd be silly to do that. But how much more we might take in-house in time, you never know. And there's always the option to license this as well elsewhere in the world, where we do kind of even less, but just license the technology so we can get our devices out there in other parts of the world where we are not looking to do as much.
Jess, I was just going to add, sorry, just one thing there on supply chain, and it relates to ports as well. Unless it just can't overstate how important the pipeline of certainty is. Sam's talked about certainty already today, but it's the same for supply chain companies and the ports. You get, as a port, going to invest 100 million on one project, maybe two, and the uncertainty around planning and all this kind of thing. So, there's pipeline of certainty is essential for ports and then supply chains.
I think all of it really underlines the point that Gerallt was making around those intricacies and on that long-term plan, and how each individual component sort of feeds in, but has potential ramifications further down the line as it's coming through. So yeah, very good point to make. Gerallt, anything you'd add? I know Mentes Morna obviously are active in the Selkie project, which is bringing through supply chain companies to interface with the sector. MEW has a similar work package that we're about to kick off in terms of supply chain, looking at how we can engage. Is there anything else you'd sort of suggest for the next year that we can be building on to ensure that interface is there and understood?
Not really. I think it's very interesting what David was saying in his presentation about the relationship between achieving high local content and port facilities. It's something that maybe has not been sufficiently well covered. I think it relates to Holyhead Port, certainly, which was heavily orientated towards the Wilfa B or the Wilfa Newydd prognosis previously, and as is often the case, I think people will believe tidal stream energy when they see it, because in advance they don't always appreciate the importance of it. And even though we've been pressing them at Holyhead Port, and will continue to do so, David is absolutely right about it. It's easy to talk about maximizing local content. It's more difficult to achieve it unless we have these pillars in place beforehand, one of which is port infrastructure. And it would be a great shame if the industry were to arrive here before port capacity was here, and providing what they needed. And I think also we have to always take into account the developer perspective here, that from in our case, our 8 developers who have their own series of challenges in terms of having certainty and being able to draw their investments down. And that's yet another component that we are trying to navigate through. But local content, yes, we have to do more than talk about it. We have to be able to describe how it's going to be achieved, I think. And we've done quite a lot of work in that particular field in our process. For example, we were quite keen for developers to show exactly how they were going to contribute to local content, and also to quantify that, because most of them, I think, have met the suppliers that we have in this part of the world who are relevant to this industry, and have therefore thereafter been able to be sufficiently well informed to be able to quantify it. And I think it's important to quantify it, so that we are doing more than just talking about it and having the aspiration, which is the easy part.
It is very easy indeed. Thank you very much, Gerallt. Very good. I think our ongoing work with the Marine Energy Programme and our, as MEW, our supply chain work package that we're undertaking, hopefully will begin to sort of support that momentum. And as we've touched on, floating offshore wind coming through potentially a little bit in advance of wave and tidal certainly offers learning and hopefully development to our port and infrastructure that will support the sector as a whole going forward. I think probably, unless anybody has anything else that they'd like to raise across the panel, I might bring us to a close there. Conscious, unfortunately, Martin Edlin from Monesto hasn't been able to make it today. I've been unable to get hold of him, so he's had ample time, but we may bring that to a close. Is there anything anybody else would like to add? No hands waving frantically.
Just a thanks, Jess, for the event and launching the report.
No problem at all. If I can extend my thanks to all of you for participating in this. Just to reiterate, the report is available on our website. I have put the link in the chat. Please do go and download it. Utilise those numbers. They're significant. They pack a punch. I think in demonstrating the activity that's here through to private investment and what that represents as an opportunity for jobs, local supply chain, as we've talked about, and economic growth as well, and fundamentally as decarbonisation. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for your time today, and thanks to our listeners for tuning in.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Diolch yn fawr.